The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Mira Chen pressed her face against the window. Station Varanthos hung in the darkness of space like a metal flower. Its massive arms stretched out in all directions, covered with lights and landing platforms. Somewhere inside that station was the most famous military academy in the galaxy, and Mira was going to walk through its doors. She was 16 years old. She had black hair cut short and practical. Her eyes were dark brown and always watching, always thinking. Back on Earth, she had been the top student in the Global Defense Youth Program. She had studied every fighting style humans knew. She had read every book about alien species she could find. When Earth's government announced they would send one candidate to the Galactic Combat Academy, Mira had fought hard to be chosen. Now she was here, the first human ever to apply. The transport docked with a soft thump. Mira grabbed her small bag and walked to the exit. The doors opened, and she stepped onto Station Varanthos for the first time. The smell hit her first. The air was different here, filled with strange scents from dozens of alien species. The sounds came next. Clicking, hissing, deep rumbling voices and high-pitched whistles. All around her, creatures of every shape and size moved through the wide corridor. A Crithian walked past her. It stood over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms and a body covered in dark brown chitin armor. Its head had no eyes she could see, but 2 long antennae swept the air. She knew from her studies that Crithians could sense vibrations and heat. They were natural warriors born with blade-like edges on their arms. A group of Velith glided by on the other side. They were thin and pale with large black eyes and no hair. Their movements were smooth and strange, as if they were floating slightly above the ground. Velith had psionic abilities. They could read thoughts and move objects with their minds. Mira felt very small, very human. She followed the signs to the Academy's admissions hall. The room was enormous, with ceilings so high she could barely see them. Hundreds of candidates stood in groups talking and comparing themselves. Mira saw Gorvani, massive creatures with gray skin like stone. She saw Thexians with their 6 legs and poison tails. She saw species she had never heard of. Nobody looked at her twice. She was just a small, soft creature with no claws, no armor, and no special powers. A voice boomed through the hall. "Candidates will now proceed to evaluation." Mira joined the line. One by one, candidates stepped forward onto a platform. Machines scanned their bodies. Screens displayed their physical abilities, their natural weapons, their special traits. The admissions council sat at a long table, reviewing each candidate. At the center of the council sat Commandant Thexvaros. He was the largest Crithian Mira had ever seen. His chitin was scarred from countless battles. His 4 arms rested on the table, each one ending in a natural blade that could cut through metal. He was a legend in the galaxy, the greatest warrior the Academy had ever produced. Mira's turn came. She stepped onto the platform. The machines hummed. Lights moved over her body. Numbers and data appeared on the screens around her. The council members looked at the data. Then they looked at her, then back at the data. One of them, a Velith with silver eyes, spoke first. "No natural armor, no regeneration capabilities, no venom or poison, no psionic ability detected." She paused. "Remarkably limited physical strength compared to all other candidates." Another council member, a Gorvani with a voice like grinding rocks, added, "Lifespan approximately 80 years. That is, very short. Training investment would show limited return." Commandant Thexvaros leaned forward. His antennae pointed directly at Mira. "Human," he said. His voice was deep and cold. "Why are you here?" Mira kept her voice steady. "To train, to learn, to become a warrior." "You have no weapons," the Commandant said. "Your species has been part of the Galactic Confederacy for less than 10 years. You have no military history beyond your own small planet. What makes you think you belong here?" "I learn fast," Mira said. "I work hard. I do not give up." The Commandant's mandibles clicked. It might have been a laugh. "Every candidate says such things. Your biology says otherwise." He looked at the other council members. "Vote." It was unanimous. All 7 members raised their hands against her. "Biologically unsuitable," the Commandant announced. "Application denied." Mira felt the words hit her like a punch, but she did not let her face change. She did not let them see her hurt. However, the commandant continued, Earth is a new member of the Confederacy. Sending you home immediately would be diplomatically awkward. He gestured to an assistant. You will be assigned to the spectator row. You will watch. You will learn what true warriors look like. Perhaps you will bring this knowledge back to your people. The assistant handed Mira a bundle of gray cloth. Robes. Not the crimson uniform of a candidate, but gray. The color of observers. The color of those who were not good enough. Mira took the robes. Thank you, Commandant, she said. Her voice did not shake. She walked out of the admissions hall. Around her, successful candidates celebrated. They wore crimson and laughed and talked about their future training. Nobody noticed the human girl in gray walking past them. She found her quarters. It was a tiny room, barely big enough for a bed and a small desk. A window looked out at the stars. Far below, she could see the training grounds through another window. Candidates were already practicing, showing off their abilities. Mira sat on her bed. She was alone. She was rejected. She was nothing to them. For a long moment, she sat in silence. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. She opened it to a blank page and began to write. She wrote about the Crethian who walked past her in the corridor. She wrote about how his antennae moved, how his weight shifted when he walked, how his blade arms rested at his sides. She wrote about the Velith and their strange gliding movement. She wrote about everything she had seen. Then she closed the notebook and looked out the window at the training grounds below. They thought she was here to watch. They thought she was here to learn her place. They were half right. She was going to watch. She was going to learn. But not her place. She was going to learn their weaknesses, every species, every fighting style, every pattern and habit and mistake. They had given her a seat with the perfect view, and Mira Chen never wasted an opportunity. She smiled in the darkness of her tiny room. Let them think she was nothing. Let them forget she was even there. That was exactly what she wanted. 3 weeks passed on Station Varanthos. Every morning, Mira woke before the lights came on. She did her exercises in the tiny space of her room. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches, quiet movements that made no sound. Then she put on her gray robes and walked to the spectator row. The row was a long balcony that looked down on the main training grounds. Other observers sat there too. Failed candidates who had not gone home yet. Diplomatic visitors from various planets. Old veterans who came to watch the new generation. None of them paid attention to the small human girl who sat in the same spot every day. Below, the real candidates trained. Mira watched everything. She watched Skethrol, the Crithian prodigy. He was young for his species, but already famous. His blade arms moved faster than the eye could follow. He won every sparring match. The instructors praised him constantly. He would be the greatest warrior of his generation, they said. Mira watched him fight 27 times. On the 28th time, she saw it. When Skethrol attacked with his upper right arm, his lower left arm dropped slightly. Just for a moment, a tiny gap in his defense. He did it every single time. It was a habit built into his muscle memory. He did not know he was doing it. Mira wrote it in her notebook. She watched the Velith candidates. They trained separately, using their psionic powers to attack and defend. They could sense thoughts and predict movements before they happened. No one could surprise them. But Mira noticed something. Before every psionic attack, there was a small twitch, a tiny movement of their fingers. It happened about half a second before the attack came. They could not help it. Their minds needed that physical trigger to focus their power. Half a second was not much time, but it was time. Mira wrote it in her notebook. The Gorvani were the largest candidates. Their skin was like stone. They could take hits that would kill any other species. They were slow, but their strength was terrifying. One punch could break bones. One grab could crush metal. Mira watched them move. They were powerful going forward, but when they needed to turn, they were slow. Their massive bodies needed time to pivot. If someone moved around them quickly enough, they could not keep up. She wrote it in her notebook. Every day she watched. Every night she wrote. Her notebook filled with observations, patterns, and weaknesses. She studied each species like a scientist studying animals. She learned their strengths. More importantly, she learned their limits. But watching was not enough. One night, Mira left her quarters after lights out. She had spent days learning the station's layout. She knew where the cameras were. She knew when the guards changed shifts. She moved through the dark corridors like a shadow. She found the lower decks. Down here, maintenance drones worked on the station's systems. Broken equipment was stored before being recycled. No one came here except the machines. Mira found what she was looking for: training weapons that had been discarded, damaged practice armor, old exercise equipment. Not perfect, but enough. She cleared a space between the storage containers. She set up her equipment, and she began to train. She could not copy the aliens exactly. Her body was different. She did not have 4 arms like a Crithian. She could not use psionic powers like a Velith. She was not strong like a Gorvani, but she could adapt. She practiced moving against imaginary Crithian opponents. She learned to watch for that dropped guard, to strike in that tiny moment of weakness. She trained herself to react in half a second, to move the instant she saw a Velith's fingers twitch. She practiced circling, always circling, staying in the Gorvani's blind spot. She ran, she climbed. She did exercises that pushed her body to its limits. Humans could not win through strength or special powers, but humans had something else. They could keep going when other species stopped. They could run for hours, they could ignore pain that would make others quit. Mira trained until her muscles screamed. Then she trained more. She slept 4 hours each night, sometimes less. Her body hurt constantly. She did not care. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a month. Up in the spectator row, no one noticed anything different. The human girl sat quietly in her gray robes, watching like always. She looked tired sometimes. That was all. But one person noticed. Velith Ceres Ithmara was a junior instructor at the academy. She was older than the candidates, but young for an instructor. Her psionic abilities were strong, and she often scanned the training grounds to check on her students. One day her mind brushed against the human in the spectator row. It was an accident. She had not meant to read the girl's thoughts. What she found made her freeze. The human's mind was not quiet. It was not simple. It was a storm of analysis. Data flowed through it like water through a river. The girl was watching a Crithian sparring match, but in her mind she was breaking down every movement. Attack angles, timing, weaknesses, counter moves. She was processing more information than most computers. Ithmara pulled back quickly. She felt like she had looked into a machine, not a person. She watched the human girl for the rest of the day. The girl never moved. She just sat and watched. But now Ithmara knew what was happening behind those calm brown eyes. The Cirrus said nothing to the commandant. She was not sure why. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was something else. The galaxy had dismissed humans as weak and useless. But what if they were wrong? Ithmara decided to wait and see. Below in the training grounds, Skethral won another match. The crowd cheered. The instructors praised him. Above, in the spectator row, Mira wrote in her notebook. She had found 3 more weaknesses in his technique today. She had also noticed that he grew overconfident after winning. He started to show off. His focus slipped. She could use that. Mira closed her notebook and looked down at the candidates in their crimson uniforms. They were strong. They were fast. They had powers she could never have. But they did not know she was coming. They thought she was just a spectator. A failed candidate. A small, soft human in gray robes who would soon go home and be forgotten. They were wrong. Mira had been watching for over a month. She had filled 3 notebooks. She had trained alone for hundreds of hours. She knew their weaknesses better than they knew themselves. Now she needed one thing: an opportunity. She would find it, or she would make it. Humans were good at that too. The exhibition hall was filled with noise. Hundreds of spectators sat in the curved seats that rose up around the central arena. Candidates stood in groups, waiting for their turn to demonstrate their skills. This was the monthly exhibition, a tradition at the academy where students showed their progress. Mira sat in her usual place in the spectator row. But today she did not have her notebook. Today she had something else. She had spent the last week studying the academy's rulebook. It was old, very old, written thousands of years ago when the academy was first created. Most people never read it. They just followed the traditions that had grown up over time. But Mira had read every page, and she had found something interesting. Rule 847, Section C. Any observer of the Academy may request participation in an exhibition match, provided they can demonstrate basic competency in combat. This rule exists to ensure that those who watch may also learn through experience. The rule had not been used in over 300 years. Everyone had forgotten about it. Mira had not forgotten. Down in the arena, a Crithian candidate finished his demonstration. The crowd applauded. Commandant Thexvaros nodded with approval from his seat of honor. "Are there any requests from the spectators?" an announcer asked. This was a normal part of the exhibition. Sometimes observers asked to see specific techniques or matches between particular candidates. Mira stood up. Everyone nearby turned to look at her, the human girl in gray robes. What could she possibly want? "I request participation," Mira said. Her voice was clear and loud. "Under Rule 847, Section C." Silence fell over the exhibition hall. The announcer looked confused. He checked his data pad. His eyes went wide. "That rule, it exists," he said slowly, "but it has not been used in centuries." "It is still a rule," Mira said. "I request a match." Whispers spread through the crowd. The human wanted to fight? The weak little creature who had been rejected? This was ridiculous. This was amusing. This was going to be entertaining. Commandant Thexvaros leaned forward in his seat, his antennae pointed at Mira. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his mandibles clicked. Laughter. "Very well," he said. "The human wishes to participate. We will allow it. Let it be a lesson to her." He gestured to the arena. "She will face our lowest-ranked candidate, a fair match for someone of her abilities." The crowd laughed. Mira did not react. She walked down from the spectator row, her gray robes flowing behind her. Her opponent stepped into the arena from the other side. Dren was a young Gorvani. He was struggling in his training. His instructors said he was too slow, too unfocused. He was the worst candidate in his class. But he was still Gorvani. He stood over 2 meters tall. His body was covered in gray, stone-like skin. His arms were as thick as Mira's entire body. He weighed over 400 kilograms. Mira weighed 52 kilograms. Dren looked down at her. He seemed almost embarrassed. Fighting a human felt like fighting a child. There was no honor in this. "I will try not to hurt you badly," he said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Mira did not answer. She took her position. Her feet were set just right. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. Her eyes were focused on Dren's massive body. The signal came. The match began. Dren moved forward. His first punch was slow and careful. He did not want to kill the small human. He just wanted to knock her down and end this quickly. Mira was not there. She had moved the instant his weight shifted. She was at his side now. Her hand shot out and struck a point on his arm. It was a nerve cluster that Gorvani did not even know they had. Mira had found it in an old medical text. Dren's arm went numb. He blinked in surprise. He swung with his other arm. Mira ducked under it and rolled behind him. She struck another nerve point on his back. Pain shot through his body. The crowd had stopped laughing. Dren turned to face her, but she was already moving. She was always moving. She circled around him, staying in his blind spots. Every time he tried to pivot, she was somewhere else. He grew frustrated. He attacked faster, harder. He stopped trying to be gentle. But his attacks hit only air. The human girl was like smoke. He could not touch her. Mira was not trying to hurt him. She was not strong enough for that. Instead, she was exhausting him. Every missed swing cost energy. Every time he turned, his massive body worked harder. Every nerve strike added more pain. 3 minutes passed. Dren was breathing heavily. His attacks were slower now. Sweat covered his stone-like skin. Mira had not stopped moving. She was tired too. Her lungs burned. Her legs ached. But she did not show it. She kept circling, kept striking, kept pushing. 4 minutes. Dren stumbled. His legs were weak. His arms felt like they weighed 1,000 kilograms each. Mira struck one final nerve cluster on his neck. Dren collapsed. He did not get up. The exhibition hall was completely silent. Mira stood alone in the arena. Her gray robes were dusty. Her breathing was heavy. But she was standing, and Dren was not. She looked up at Commandant Thexvaros. His antennae were rigid. His mandibles were still. He stared at her like he was seeing something impossible. The silence stretched on. No one knew what to say. No one knew what had just happened. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a single person began to clap. Cirrus Ithmara. She stood in her instructor's robes, her pale hands coming together slowly. Others joined her, not cheering, not celebrating, just acknowledging. The human had won. Against all expectations, against all logic, she had won. Mira bowed to the commandant. Then she turned and walked out of the arena. She did not wait for permission. She did not ask what would happen next. Behind her, the whispers began. What did this mean? How had she done it? What was going to happen now? In his seat, Commandant Thexvaros sat very still. His 4 hands were clenched into fists. He had let this happen. He had thought it would be amusing. He had been wrong. The human girl had made him look like a fool. He would not forget that. Mira walked back to her tiny quarters. She closed the door behind her. Then she sat on her bed and let out a long, slow breath. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She had done it. She had actually done it. But she knew this was not the end. This was the beginning. She had won one fight against the weakest candidate. She had proven she could compete. But she had also made herself visible. She had made enemies. The hard part was just starting. Mira looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting, her home, her people. They were counting on her, even if they did not know it. She would not let them down. She would not let herself down. Tomorrow, everything would change. She did not know exactly how, but she was ready. She had been ready for a long time. The crimson uniform felt strange on Mira's body. For months, she had worn gray. Now she wore the same color as everyone else. But she was not the same as everyone else, and they made sure she knew it. After the exhibition match, things had moved quickly. Diplomatic observers from several planets had asked questions. Earth's ambassador had made calls. Cirrus Ithmara had spoken to the right people. In the end, the Academy had no choice. Mira was given provisional candidate status. The commandant had announced it himself. His voice had been cold and flat. The human has demonstrated basic competency. She will be allowed to train. Whether she survives is her own concern. The other candidates had watched her receive her crimson uniform. Some were curious, some were confused, and some were angry. Skethral was very angry. He was the prodigy, the future of Crithian warriors. He had trained his entire life for this academy. And now a weak little human was standing among them as an equal. It was an insult to everything he believed in. On Mira's first day of real training, she found her equipment had been damaged. Her practice sword was cracked. Her armor had missing pieces. No one knew how it happened. On her second day, she was accidentally hit during sparring practice. A Crithian candidate's blade arm cut her shoulder. The instructor saw nothing wrong. Accidents happen. On her third day, she woke to find her quarters had been flooded. A water pipe had mysteriously broken. All her belongings were soaked. Her notebooks were ruined. Mira did not complain. She repaired what she could. She rewrote her notes from memory. She trained with broken equipment. She learned to watch her back at all times. The candidates who hurt her grew bolder. They saw that no one would protect her. They saw that the instructors looked the other way. They pushed harder. One night, 3 candidates cornered her in a corridor. 2 Crithians and a Thexian with a poison tail. They did not say anything. They did not need to. Mira looked at them calmly. "You want to hurt me?" she said. "You can try. Maybe you will succeed. But I will hurt at least one of you first, and everyone will know what you did. Is it worth it?" They stared at her. This small human was not begging. She was not running. She was calculating, like a predator measuring its prey. They let her pass, but the message was clear. She was not welcome here. She would never be welcome. Mira trained harder than anyone. She woke earlier. She slept less. She pushed her body beyond what should be possible. When other candidates rested, she practiced. When they slept, she studied. Humans had a gift that other species did not understand. Long ago, on the plains of Earth, humans had hunted by following animals for days. Not catching them quickly, but following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. It was called persistence hunting. Humans were not the fastest or the strongest, but they could keep going when others stopped. Mira did not just keep going. She refused to stop. Then came the midterm trials, the wilderness simulation. The academy used a massive holographic environment that felt completely real. Candidates were dropped into it alone and had to survive for 48 hours. The environment was hostile. There were dangerous creatures, harsh weather, and limited resources. It was designed to test everything: combat skills, survival instincts, mental strength. Mira entered the simulation already tired. She had been training constantly. Her body was covered in bruises from accidents during sparring. She had slept only 3 hours the night before. The simulation dropped her into a frozen forest. Snow covered everything. The temperature was far below freezing. She was wearing only her basic training uniform. Mira did not hesitate. She moved immediately, searching for shelter and resources. She found a small cave. She made a fire using techniques she had learned from old Earth survival manuals. She found water and food. The simulation threw challenges at her. Predator creatures attacked during the night. She fought them off with a sharpened stick. A blizzard hit during the second day. She stayed in her cave and waited it out. Her food ran low. She rationed carefully. 36 hours in, she heard something. A cry for help. Far away but clear. Mira crawled to the entrance of her cave and looked out. The blizzard had passed. Through the trees, she could see a ravine. And at the bottom of the ravine, she could see movement. A candidate had fallen. They were injured. Mira recognized the markings on their chitin armor. Skethral, the prodigy, the one who had made her life miserable. He had broken both legs in the fall. He could not climb out. She could leave him. The simulation would eventually end. Medical staff would retrieve him. He might fail the trial, but he would survive. And after everything he had done to her, she owed him nothing. Mira looked at the ravine. She looked at her own injured body. She thought about the choice. Then she started climbing down. It took an hour to reach him. The rocks were slippery with ice. Several times she almost fell herself. When she reached the bottom, Skethral stared at her in disbelief. "What are you doing?" he asked. His voice was weak from pain and cold. "Being stupid," Mira said. "Can you move your arms?" "Yes." "Then hold on to me." She lifted him onto her back. A Crithian weighed twice what she did. His body was heavy and awkward. His broken legs hung uselessly. Every step was agony. Mira climbed. She climbed for 3 hours. Her muscles screamed. Her hands bled from gripping the rocks. Her vision blurred from exhaustion. Several times she wanted to stop. Several times she wanted to let go. She did not stop. She did not let go. When she reached the top of the ravine, she collapsed in the snow. Skethral lay beside her, unconscious from pain. The simulation timer showed 2 hours remaining. Mira lay in the snow and stared at the gray sky. Her body felt broken. She could not move, but she was alive, and so was Skethral. The simulation ended. Medical staff rushed in and found them both. The story spread through the academy within hours. The human girl had not only survived the trial, she had saved the life of the candidate who had tormented her. Commandant Thexveros stood in his office, reading the report. His chitin had gone pale. He had been wrong about the human. He had been wrong about everything. She was not just stubborn. She was not just clever. She was something else entirely. Something his species had no word for. And she was not done yet. The final examination was the most important test at the academy. Candidates faced a combat AI in a simulated siege scenario. The AI controlled an army of enemies. It adapted to every strategy. It learned from every mistake. In 500 years, no candidate had ever defeated it completely. A score of 60% was considered excellent. 70% was legendary. The highest score ever recorded was 73%, achieved by Commandant Thexveros himself when he was a student. On the morning of the final examination, Mira stood in line with the other candidates. She looked different now. Her body was lean and hard from months of brutal training. Her eyes were calm and focused. She no longer wore the gray robes of an observer. She wore the crimson uniform with pride. Next to her stood Skethral. Something had changed between them after the wilderness trial. He no longer attacked her. He no longer tried to hurt her. Sometimes he even nodded at her in the corridors. It was not friendship, but it was something. One by one, the candidates entered the simulation. A Gorvani scored 54%. His strength could not overcome the AI's tactics. A Velith scored 61%. Her psionic powers were impressive, but the AI adapted too quickly. Skethral scored 68%. It was an excellent result. The crowd applauded. His family would be proud. Then it was Mira's turn. She stepped into the simulation chamber. The doors closed behind her. The world changed. She stood in a ruined city. Buildings crumbled around her. Fire burned in the distance. The AI's army was coming. Thousands of soldiers. Dozens of vehicles. The siege had begun. Mira did not charge forward. She did not look for weapons. Instead, she looked around. She studied the environment. She thought. The AI expected direct combat. Every candidate before her had tried to fight. They had used their strength, their powers, their natural weapons. That was what the AI was designed to handle. Mira was going to do something different. She started moving through the ruined buildings, not fighting the enemy soldiers, but avoiding them. She found the city's infrastructure, water pipes, power lines, communication nodes. The AI needed these things to coordinate its army. She started breaking them, not with strength, with knowledge. She cut the right wires, she blocked the right pipes. She created failures in systems that the AI depended on. The AI adapted. It sent soldiers to protect the infrastructure. But now its forces were divided. It was defending instead of attacking. Mira kept moving. She never stopped. Hour after hour, she ran, climbed, crawled, and fought. When she had to fight, she fought smart. She used the environment. She set traps. She turned the AI's soldiers against each other. The AI had never faced an opponent like this. It was designed to counter strength with strength, power with power. But the human did not fight with strength or power. She fought with patience. She fought with endurance. She fought with a mind that never stopped calculating. 12 hours into the simulation, something strange happened. The AI began sending messages to the control room. Error reports. It could not understand what was happening. Its models did not account for an enemy who refused to engage directly, who refused to tire, who refused to give up. Outside the simulation, the instructors watched in amazement. Ceres Ithmara stood at the front, her black eyes fixed on the screens. She had known the human was special. She had not known she was this special. Commandant Thexvaros said nothing. He stood with his forearms crossed, watching the small human dismantle his examination. 20 hours into the simulation, the AI made a mistake. It concentrated its forces for a final assault, leaving a path to its command center unprotected. Mira took that path. She reached the AI's core. She destroyed it. The simulation ended. The screens displayed the final score. 94%, the highest score in the history of the Academy. The control room was silent. Then chaos erupted. Instructors shouted. Candidates pushed forward to see the screens. The news spread through the station like wildfire. The human had broken the record. The human had done the impossible. Mira walked out of the simulation chamber. She was exhausted. Her body ached. She had been awake for over 20 hours. But she was standing. She was always standing. The graduation ceremony was held 1 week later. The Great Hall of the Academy was filled with thousands of spectators. Diplomats from across the galaxy had come to see this moment. Earth's ambassador sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Commandant Thexvaros stood at the podium. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. Something in him had changed. He called the graduates forward one by one. Crithians, Velith, Gorvani, and others. Each received their commission, their official rank as a warrior of the Galactic Confederacy. Then he called the last name. Mira Chen, human, Earth. Mira walked to the podium. The hall was completely silent. Every eye was on her. The commandant looked down at her for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed his head. First in class, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall. Highest examination score in 500 years. He paused. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about your species. He handed her the commission. Mira took it. Her hands did not shake. Sires Ithmara stepped forward. She had been given permission to speak. The Academy will be changing its curriculum, she announced. We have studied the human's methods, her endurance, her adaptability, her refusal to surrender. She looked at the assembled crowd. We call it Human Persistence Doctrine. It will become a required course of study for all future candidates. The crowd murmured. This was unprecedented. A new species joining the Academy was rare. A new species changing the Academy was unheard of. Mira turned to face the hall. Thousands of faces looked back at her. Faces that had dismissed her. Faces that had laughed at her. Faces that had tried to break her. She had not broken. Near the front she saw Sketherol. He met her eyes and inclined his head. Respect. Hard-earned and finally given. Behind the crowds in the back of the hall, she saw something else. A display case had been set up. Inside it were her old gray robes, preserved behind glass. A small plaque beneath them read, First Human Candidate, assigned to observation status, graduated first in class. The robe produces no more spectators. Mira looked at those gray robes. She remembered sitting alone in her tiny room, watching the training grounds below, planning and preparing while everyone forgot she existed. They had put her in the spectator row. They had expected her to watch and learn her place. She had watched. She had learned. But not her place. She had learned theirs. And now she had risen to stand above them all. The hall erupted in applause. Candidates cheered. Instructors saluted. For the first time in her life, Mira Chen smiled in front of everyone. The human girl from the spectator row had become the new standard, and the galaxy would never forget it.